Merry Christmas Eve, Squirrel Squad. Time to read. Reading goes on, holidays or not. Makes the holidays even better, I think. Not that I'm reading it, just the story. The girls were all flourishing. Daisy, as sweet and domestic as ever, was her mother's comfort and companion. Josie, at 14, was a most original young person, full of pranks and peculiarities, the latest of which was a passion for the stage, which caused her quiet mother and sister much anxiety as well as amusement. Bess had grown into a tall, beautiful girl, looking several years older than she was, with the same graceful ways and dainty taste which the little princess had, and a rich inheritance of both the father's and mother's gifts, fostered by every aid love and money could give. But the pride of the community was naughty Nan, for like so many restless, willful children, she was growing into a woman full of the energy and promise that suddenly blossoms when the ambitious seeker finds the work she is fitted to do well. Nan began to study medicine at 16 and at 20 was getting on bravely. For now, thanks to other intelligent women, colleges and hospitals were open to her. She had never wavered in her purpose from the childish days when she shocked Daisy in the old willow by saying, "I don't want any family to fuss over. I shall have an office with bottles and pestle things in it and drive round and cure folks." The future foretold by the little girl, the young woman was rapidly bringing to pass, and finding so much happiness in it that nothing could win her from the chosen work. Several worthy young gentlemen had tried to make her change her mind and choose, as Daisy did, a nice little house and family to take care of, but Nan only laughed and routed the lovers by proposing to look at the tongue which spoke of adoration or professionality, felt the pulse in the manly hand offered for her acceptance. So all departed, but one persistent youth who was such a devoted Traddles it was impossible to quench him. This was Tom, who was as faithful to his child sweetheart as she to her pestle things, and gave a proof of fidelity that touched her very much. He studied medicine for her sake alone, having no taste for it, and decided fancy for a mercantile life. But Nan was firm, and Tom stoutly kept on, devoutly hoping he might not kill many of his fellow beings when he came to practice. They were excellent friends, however, and caused much amusement to their comrades by the vicissitudes of this merry love chase. Both were approaching Plumfield on the afternoon when Mrs. Meg and Mrs. Joe were talking on the piazza. Not together, for Nan was walking briskly along the pleasant road alone, thinking over a case that interested her, and Tom was pegging on behind to overtake her, as if by accident, when the suburbs of the city were passed a little way of his, which was part of the joke. Nan was a handsome girl with a fresh color, clear eye, quick smile, and the self-poised look young women with a purpose always have. She was simply and sensibly dressed, walked easily, and seemed full of vigor, with her broad shoulders well back, arms swinging freely, and the elasticity of youth and health in every motion. The few people she met turned to look at her as if it was a pleasant sight to see a hearty, happy girl walking countryward that lovely day, and the red-faced young man steaming along behind, hat off, and every tight curl wagging with impatience, evidently agreed with them. Presently a mild "hello" was borne upon the breeze, and pausing with an effort to look surprised, that was an utter failure, Nan said affably, "Oh, is that you, Tom?" "Looks like it. Thought you might be walking out today," and Tom's jovial face beamed with pleasure. "You knew it. How is your throat?" asked Nan in her professional tone, which was always a quencher to undue raptures. "Throat? Oh, yes, I remember. It is well. The effect of that prescription was wonderful. I'll never call homeopathy a humbug again. You were the humbug this time, and so were the unmedicated pellets I gave you. If sugar or milk could cure diarrhea in this remarkable manner, I'll make a note of it. Oh, Tom, will you never be done playing tricks? Oh, Nan, will you never be done getting the better of me?" And the merry pair laughed at one another just as they did in the old times, which always came back freshly when they went to Plumfield. "Well, I knew I shouldn't see you for a week if I didn't scare up some excuse to call at the office. You are so desperately busy all the time, and I never get a word," explained Tom. "You ought to be busy too and above such nonsense. Really, Tom, if you don't give your mind to your lectures, you'll never get on," said Nan soberly. "I have quite enough of them as it is," answered Tom with an air of disgust. "A fellow must lark a bit after dissecting corpses all day. I can't stand it long at a time, though some people seem to enjoy it immensely." "Then why not leave it? Do what suits you better. I always thought it a foolish thing, you know," said Nan, with a trace of anxiety in the keen eyes that searched for signs of illness in the face as ruddy as a Baldwin apple. "You know why I chose it, and why I shall stick to it if it kills me. I may not look delicate, but I've a deep-seated heart to complaint, and it will carry me off sooner or later, for only one doctor in the world can cure it, and she won't." There was an air of pensive resignation about Tom that was both comic and pathetic, for he was in earnest and kept on giving hints of this sort without the least encouragement. Nan frowned, but she was used to it and knew how to treat him. "She is curing it in the best way and only way, but a more refractory patient never lived. Did you go to that ball as I directed?" "I did." "And devote yourself to pretty Miss West?" "Danced with her the whole evening." "No impression made on that susceptible organ of yours?" "His heart." "Not the slightest. I gaped in her face once, forgot to feed her, and gave a sigh of relief when I handed her over to her mamma." "Repeat the dose as often as possible. Note the symptoms. I predict that you'll cry for it by and by." "Never. I'm sure it doesn't suit my constitution." "You shall see. Obey orders sternly." "Yes, doctor," meekly. Silence reigned for a moment. Then, as if a bone of contention was forgotten in the pleasant recollections, called up by familiar objects, Nan said suddenly, "What fun we used to have in that wood. Do you remember how you tumbled out of the big nut tree and nearly broke your collarbone?" "Don't I? And how you steeped me in wormwood till I was a fine mahogany color, and Aunt Jo wailed over my spoilt jacket," laughed Tom, a boy again in a minute. "And how you set the house afire, and you ran off for your bandbox. Do you ever say thunder turtles now? Do people ever call you Giddy Gaddy?" They were going back and forth. "Daisy does, dear thing. I haven't seen her for a week. I saw Demi this morning, and she said she was keeping house for Mother Bear. She always does when Aunt Jo goes into a vortex. Daisy is a model housekeeper, and you couldn't do better. You couldn't do better than make your bow to her. If you can't go to work and wait till you're grown up before you begin lovering, Nat would break his fiddle over my head if I suggested such a thing. No, thank you. Another name is engraved upon my heart as indelibly as the blue anchor on my arm. Hope is my motto, and no surrender yours. See who will hold out the longest. You silly boys think we must pair off as we did when children, but we shall do nothing of the kind. How well Parnassus looks from here. Parnassus, said Nan, abruptly changing the conversation again. It is a fine house, but I love old Plum best. Wouldn't Aunt March stare if she could see the changes here? Answered Tom as they both paused at the great gate to look at the pleasant landscape before them. A sudden whoop startled them as a long boy with a yellow wild head came leaping over a hedge like a kangaroo, followed by a slender girl who stuck in the hawthorn and sat there laughing like a witch. A pretty little lass she was, with curly dark hair, bright eyes, and a very expressive face. Her hat was at her back, and her skirts a good deal the worse for the brooks she had crossed, the trees she had climbed, and the last leap, which added several fine rents. Take me down, Nan, please. Tom, hold Ted. He's got my book, and I will have it, called Josie from her perch, not at all daunted by the appearance of her friends. Tom promptly collared the thief while Nan picked Josie from among the thorns and set her on her feet without a word of reproof for having been a romp in her own childhood. She was very indulgent to like taste in others. What's the matter, dear? She asked, pinning up the longest rip while Josie examined the scratches on her hands. I was studying my part in the willow, and Ted came slyly up and poked the book out of my hands with his rod. It fell in the brook, and before I could scramble down, he was off. You wretch, give it back to me this moment, or I shall box your ears, cried Josie, laughing and scolding in the same breath. Ooh, this is long too. Well, guys, I guess this is going to be, let's see, what did I just end with? In the same breath. Let me just bookmark that in case. Let's see how much more we have. Ooh, quite a bit more, so we'll save it for tomorrow. Christmas reading. Be sweet, don't be ugly. And please have a wonderful Christmas Eve. I'm going to a dinner tonight. So the pumpkin crisp was made yesterday. Well, what happened to my bookmark? Pumpkin crisp was made yesterday, so all I have to do today is put the icing on. So yay! Okie dokie. Have a fab day. Mwah. Love you bunches.